Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 25 of Ask a Pro for the ADU University. I am super excited to welcome Lanska from Crest Backyard Homes. We originally had planned to have John, who's one of the principals of Crest Backyard Homes, but his airplane decided to eat a bird. So welcome, Lanska.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me. I promise I won't be second best. As you guys know, behind every two men, there is even a stronger woman. So that's our team, kind of. We're three people in this company, and I'm actually the one that's out in the field. And John and Tim, who have combined 80 years of experience in the manufactured housing world. So I'm the kind of the new kid in the block when maybe it comes to manufactured, but 20 years of real estate experience.
Well, Lanska, you and I have spent some time talking the other day and this morning, and I know that this is going to be fantastic. You have a really deep understanding of appraisal issues. You understand the difference between, the two different types of, or the multiple different types of accessory dwelling units, which is going to be our focus. We're going to be focusing on the least understood and the least kind of offered options for homeowners for an ADU, because, it's kind of in a different silo, and we're going to be talking about that. So just some best practices right away for those of you that are with us. If you want to put a question or comments, and you can do it in either the Q&A or the chat, and I'll be sure to be able to get those to Lanska, or I'll be able to answer them myself. Also, too, if you're listening to this or watching it, put your comments, down below or anywhere, and we'll do our very best to get back to you on that. Also, too, we will be providing some links to Crest Backyard Homes, because and also where the areas that they service, because one of the features of the ADU University is to be able to feature companies that are proven providers and professionals in this ADU space, because there's so many people that are out there. And so, again, I'm sorry that John couldn't be here. He is missed, which also gives us an opportunity to do round two, which I think would be awesome. So, John, sorry that you got laid up, but I'm just hoping you have a safe flight back into Southern California. So, Lanska, you shared just a little bit about yourself, that you're kind of part of the team over at Crest Backyard Homes, but tell me what it is you typically do on a daily or weekly basis with ADUs.
All right. It's pretty much, we're three people in the company, right? And John, with his experience, usually fields our first touches with the customer, because, as you know, just a few questions will just reveal how serious they are, what they know, what they don't know. And once he gets a good feel for it, and they're willing to kind of go a little deeper and explore the manufactured option of the ADU world, then I am the one that's actually going out to the house and to do a feasibility study and a report. So we're looking at the entire, not just property, but at the client's situation. And many people have many questions, right? And until they kind of decide what unit they want to put in it, and if it is possible or not, and what are the pros and cons. And before even Tim gets involved, so Tim is kind of the man behind the scenes that takes care of all the actual home ordering options and deals with the factory. I just have to deal with the great clients.
So you are basically the face of it. So that's really important. And thank you for sharing that. So for those of you who are here, what Lanska is talking about is, because the topic today is about factory built, modular, manufactured ADUs. There's a lot of different names to them, and they can be very confusing. Prefab is even lumped into that because it's kind of pre-built, because that's what people think prefab means. And I would too. So that it's built offsite and then it's just delivered. So in their minds, they're thinking it's that unit that they see rolling down the road on some wheels and axles. and that is soon going to be soaring over their house with a crane to be dropped in, or if you're lucky, it can just be tractored into the property. And we're going to dive into that because I saw a couple of the slides that you have in your presentation. So don't go anywhere, folks. You got to be able to see these slides that Lenska has. They are fantastic. But let's kind of back up just a little bit. And let's kind of talk about what your perspective is as a professional working with ADUs and the people that you talk to, because you're the one going out to the home and talking to the homeowners. Many people don't understand what manufactured homes, factory built, or modular ADUs are. They may, but they may not really completely understand all the aspects that go into considering if that's even an option. And I bring this up, they may not consider it's an option because unless you're talking to someone like Lenska or someone with Crest Backyard Homes, you may not be presented with this manufactured home as an option, because you're talking to a designer or an architect, somebody that's going to draw you a set of plans. With this particular product, the plans are already done. There's no big, super, crazy involvement that's going to take 6 months or a year to draw and engineer and to have all the structural issues identified. Those are already done. So if you're talking to an architect or designer, they may not offer you this option. And so I think that's where Lenska is going to be able to advise clients and advise people to say, hey, here's an option that you should consider, and it could work, or maybe it doesn't, and then we can consider something else. Is that kind of accurate?
Let me approach it from a different point of view.
Please.
Because everybody knows stick built, right? And then people have in their mind, they have a mobile home in their mind. And a lot of people are just not educated actually what a manufactured house. Now, I'm going to dive down here for a second. And you guys all think I'm sitting in Rancho Santa Fe in one of my ADU kitchens, right? This is how nicely that is. People, this is a manufactured home. So, and it is very customized. So I think people are not educated, so they don't take it kind of in their evaluation process. And the word is just not out yet. But with all that, lately, all the press, and especially I think Boxable has helped to bring prefab into people's homes and hearts, right? Because people do like the idea. I mean, we Americans, we like instantaneous. We don't like to wait 3 years or something for a house or something to happen. Can I have it tomorrow? Yes. So, and that's kind of, it's getting popular. Then also, as we know, for a while, lumber prices went up. So all the quotes that people have gotten now from their contractors is like 300,000 and up. So some people's budget, so they were literally searching whether online or, in meetup groups or like great educational, super educational, honest, straightforward shows like yours about some answers and what else is out there. So cost, the popularity in the media is getting more, attention, and then thankfully social media too.
And I think you bring up a good point about the cost of lumber and also the time. So it's really kind of forcing people to kind of look at other options. And because again, this is where I like spending a little bit more time on this topic of a factory built manufactured home or prefab, whatever you want to call it. But it's built to the HUD code, which stands for the Housing and Urban Development, is Title 25. If you follow me on social media, you'll hear me rant about the two different building codes. It's the California Building Code with Title 24 is one code. And then you have the second, which is the HUD code, Title 25. And those are the two classifications that allow for permanent habitation or permanent occupancy. The reason that I talk about this and try to stress this to people, because if they are kind of faced with this, I need it right away because I have something I want, my mom or my dad needs to be moved in, or I want to have it rented so I can get the money coming in. some folks don't understand that there are those two different areas. And the speed of it too with manufactured homes is really come down. I mean, Lenska, you and I both know because we're in the business. What were the build times for a manufactured home during COVID?
I don't want to even go into it because I was back in the days, COVID. Yeah, the stick built guy said, oh, we can build it in 9 months. And then the factories were kind of overwhelmed and then understaffed. And they were actually giving us a time from, okay, get ready between a year or 12 months and 18 months. They really didn't mean it, but they just didn't want to risk to be late, right? And then, so now we're back up. Should we tell everybody? Maybe 3 months?
3 to 4 months. And I think that that's really key. So one of the things that, what we're touching on right now is that manufactured homes during COVID were, and this is the sad part is this is when ADUs started to get a lot of traction. People were working from home. And the nice thing about an ADU, you can have your private office, your own private office with a 20-second commute. You just got to walk from your back door to the ADU in the back. That's ridiculously awesome. So why not do that? And then it's talking about parents and family members. Maybe your kids are, kind of want to get out on their own, but they're not quite ready to leave the house because everything in Southern California is so expensive. And if you owned your house for more than a minute in Southern California, you got a little bit of equity built up. And you're going to be able to use it as a HELOC, or you might have some cash. And I think that was really great. So during this COVID time is when ADUs were starting to be really given a lot of attention. And what Lenska just said, well, the factories they weren't going to commit to building them in for like a year and a half. For me personally, I was quoted 24 months. And I'm like, okay, that means that's no longer an option. And that's, we pivoted and we were working with kit built or prefab panelized things. But the idea of having the manufactured home as an ADU is really a fantastic option. And I think that that's one of the things people really need to consider. If your home can have it, and again, you need to be able to have it delivered because it comes in one large section. And can you show everybody that slide? There's a couple slides that you have that I'd love for people to take a look at because this really illustrates the point.
You are talking about the John slides or mine? I started out with
slides towards the end of it.
Okay, so that was right here. So let me go back.
Sure. And while you're doing those, the manufactured homes, there's a process that when we talk about 3 to 4 months to build, just like with similar to a designer or an architect, there's going to be you have to configure that ADU. You need to decide what kind of exterior siding you're going to have, what kind of roofing materials and roofing colors you're going to have, as well as the various different types of cabinetry, because those are all options that you can look at when you're doing a manufactured home as an ADU. So those are things to think about. Do you have your slide deck, Lenska, that shows the because you had one where it's showing it craning over.
Okay, yes. So we can actually, I'll take this off and
so also when you configure a manufactured home, you're actually sitting down with one of the Crest Backyard Homes representatives, and you're going through all the little options. And as you do that back and forth can take 2 or 3 months, depending on how quickly the person that you're talking to is able to then convey that to the factory, and then be able to communicate it back to you, to a client, and then be able to kind of talk about those options. Yeah, if we could blow that one up, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I am.
Current slide.
Oh yeah, current slide. I know it never fails. Push the wrong button when it's show time.
I know, that's quite all right. But this
And
is where we talk about ADUs flying, as is that you have these cranes, and what can happen is that, first of all, this is a great picture because it shows all the power poles, it shows everything that the crane operator is having to navigate around. And so they have to have weighted vehicles, have weighted, so that they kind of counterbalance the weight of the manufactured home ADU that's getting ready to be dropped into the location. Yeah, you get a really great idea right there. So this is the limitations that we've been talking about. If the ADU can be delivered to your property, over the wires, around the trees, and if in that one picture, that one slide that you had, which I think was great, the width of it. So if the ADU cannot be delivered directly to the site, meaning that you don't have enough width, as in this picture, they're showing the width of the driveway. If that's not there, then having it craned in is the only option. And if you can't crane it in, well, then it's not an option. So those are things to think about. And that's what Lenska does when she's going to be doing a property evaluation, is going to be able to say, yeah, it could work. And then you can take the next steps forward.
now let me chime in on this one, because I did get out to the customer and I said, no way. Okay. So this is when John comes into play, and because with his experience, and as you can see, we exclusively use Bob's crane, because the guy came out and we looked at it. We actually considered taking one of the cables down and asked the neighbor to disconnect it, because it was just cable, it wasn't power lines, right? And so when you look at this picture here, and even, where did I label it? Wires, right? So any crane company or any manufacturer probably would have not been able to do it.
So let's take a second. I want to ask a clarifying question. The picture that you have right now showing the red arrows with the wires, the crane operator actually positioned there, right?
No, he positioned right in the driveway.
Oh, is that a neighbor's driveway?
No, that is the property.
That's the homeowner's property. Okay.
Yeah, let me see. Do I have a picture? No, I don't have a picture, because it's just to demonstrate just when you think you can't crane it in, you can.
So this picture with the crane just starting to lift up the ADU.
It's going towards that red car all the way. I mean, if I had a little bit more time, I would have had the video that we have, right, playing. But
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and to this, so the harsh reality is sometimes, okay, do you crane it in for $10,000?
Oh, that's cheap.
Yeah, or do you dismantle a little bit of plastic fence, cut down that tree, and take down the gate and the fence here?
All day long, take down the ficus tree, take down the plastic, because you can put in a new tree and put in some other new fencing materials, and it'll be easy to disassemble and assemble the chain link. And
we all know that these roots are invasive and they can go under the foundation, so they probably need to cut it down anyways.
Now, ficus trees are kind of crazy, or fig trees are also equally as nuts. Okay, so the part, once somebody finds out that an ADU can be a manufactured ADU can go on the property, what is the next part of it? And they say, yes, I want to go forward. Lenska, I like the idea. You've given them the 40-page evaluation. What happens next if somebody is interested and wants to move forward?
They'll give us a deposit. That's the one.
I love it when they give you money.
So practically, then we're working towards the permits, right? Still, I mean, a stick built, you need permits. You still need a permit for a HUD manufactured home. But why we stress this HUD word so much is that the actual house is already approved. So we don't need to get approval from the city about the lights, the plumbing, we do still need to get a sign off on the foundation.
Let's go back on that just for a second, because when I did my ADU, I had to have the rough plumbing inspected. I had to have all the electrical switches and light fixtures inspected. I had to have my HVAC, my heating, ventilation, and cooling inspected. I had to have it all inspected on site, and they were different inspections. With this, you're saying that that's not required.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have a, before you even close you have all these inspections, then they come out and inspect the drywall.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah. And then,
so this is all done, the inspections are all done at the factory.
Correct. And guess what? This is one thing I learned, that the factory, people always say, oh, is there any oversight in the factories and stuff? They actually have a HUD inspector practically on staff, I would say, or there all the time. And guess what happens? That made a lot of sense to me. If the HUD inspector would call one thing out, you know what will happen? The entire factory comes to a halt. So nobody really wants to risk that. So the attention to detail and that everything is done to code and correctly, the factory makes, may I use the word damn sure?
Yes, you can. They're going to make damn sure that it's done right, because they don't want to have an issue that stops the production line, because that costs a lot of money. So they've said that they want to move forward. They've given you a deposit. What is the next thing that somebody would do?
So then it's practically up to get the site plan drafted, right, drawn up, and the permits, the site plan, and all the materials that go with it. If you want to go into detail, we can, and then submit the application to the jurisdiction. In San Diego, we have 17 jurisdictions. Every form is different. Every jurisdiction has a different online, a different maybe third party. So there is no shoe fits all. And that's what makes the ADU or any construction. Can I just vent for a second?
Please.
So we call it accessory dwelling unit, right? So I think we're all misled, like a lot of politicians always mislead us with the bill, and then it's the opposite. And I think accessory dwelling units are nothing accessory. If you build from the ground up a 1,200 square foot ADU, you're building a new house.
You are. I agree.
So with the HUD, with the manufactured house, I mean, like you said, 6 steps in the construction process, plus another 6 steps of getting approvals from the city is just eliminated.
Right. And so it's very efficient. Not only, and one of the things we haven't touched on is just the efficiencies that happen in the factories. We touched on a little bit that everybody's going to try to get it done and doesn't want to have any problems or delays or mistakes. But having to not delay your project once it's started and waiting for those inspections. So that's a huge time savings. And I think that that's a really good point to call out.
So I think the biggest issue with all the ADUs, and which is now stick built or manufactured or panelized, is the utility connections.
Yes, those are all the same no matter what.
Okay, exactly. Yes. So that's obviously in my report. We're looking at it. How can we route it? Do we need an electrical update, a meter upgrade? Where's the water meter? Is there sewer? If people call us, and that's why John is so great, he usually asks people right away, do you have, you hooked up on sewer or septic? Because septic offsets the Apple Card, right? And
how does that upset it? Because of the capacity that the septic system is going to allow for, and that may necessitate a change or an addition?
So usually when you have a septic tank close to the main residence and you have a lot of leach lines. So usually this is where people like to put the ADU, and you cannot build over leach lines. So whether you have to reconfigure your entire septic system, or you have to call an engineer to maybe have the ADU go into the same septic tank than the existing for the main house. So, and And that can cost you around, $20,000 just to start. Now, if you don't want to tinker with the original septic system, do you have enough room for a house and another septic systems? Yes, there's actually very little invention in the whole septic system. There are these more vertical pits, but if you have groundwater and all this stuff, you get into a lot of minutia about. So a good septic engineer and contractor is worth in gold, so to speak.
And the areas where the service areas that you would see that in are where?
Usually more on the outskirts, right? So the San Diego County area, but the county jurisdiction creeps into, if people know Vista, Escondido, where was my last septic where, we had something in Encinitas, and believe it or not, everything around was on sewer. There were just 5 houses that were still on septic.
And the city was not offering to connect them to the sewer?
No, because it's a private road, so they all had to go together and had to, yeah. But it benefited.
That would have been inexpensive. What? $500,000, $1 million, maybe?
But it's 250, I think it was 250 or 300,000 to put that sewer in. Now, there are 5 homes. The value of the homes are $2 million. So do you think these people blinked an eye on spending $50,000 to get hooked up to sewer? No.
They didn't, and they went for it.
Yeah, because some wanted a pool. They couldn't have a pool because of the leach line. Some wanted an ADU, so it all worked out. Now, one person didn't want to be hooked up, and so they had a clause in their contract to, if the new owner at some point, then they all will be reimbursed. So it was one of the very few neighborhood efforts that went really well.
Lenska, that is a fantastic story because it kind of drives home the importance of having a perspective and understanding that there's nothing is always as easy as it seems. There's always something that can come up, and that companies and professionals that say, oh, it'll be fine, without giving you a word of caution, that should raise a red flag. And that's why I really want to kind of drive home the point that having some experience and perspective in the multiple jurisdictions around, the area that you live, I think is critical. And the nice thing about Lenska and the people that she works with, you've been doing this, you said early on in the webinar, 80 years of combined experience, which basically means you have the principals have decades of experience doing installations of factory-built, manufactured homes on land and property. And so that experience is really valuable. And one of the reasons I'm so happy to have you on and that we're talking about this, because a lot of companies are brand new to this and they're really not sharing all the little logistical issues. And I think that that's great. And again, that and you said Escondido or Encinitas?
That story was in Encinitas, yeah.
And Encinitas, if people are not familiar with, is a beautiful area in San Diego. It is really fantastic.
And you see a lot of ADUs going on. So if we already talk about the red flags, kind of, between or utilities, so people don't know how to watch out for easements, right?
Right.
And that is covered too late. So I had a client in Poway that a city sewer line would go right through his property.
Right. And before you continue on, can you stop screen sharing so we can?
You can. Yeah, I thought you might want to see something.
No. We'll go back to it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're talking about an easement.
Yes. So easements can go right through the property, or especially people overlook power poles, and then they design it too close. And that was not one of my clients because it was a stick built, but I have my ears to the ground with a lot of people because, like you said, stories are invaluable. So he already had the permit for the ADU from the city, all signed off. The
All
permit
the setbacks
card
are already, all the setbacks are already on the site plan.
everything was approved. So he calls SDG&E to get temporary power or something, and they said, no, you can't do this. This is a high voltage power point. We need a setback of 6 feet.
So the jurisdiction didn't require a sign off or a spot location from the electric utility.
I don't know who is to blame if you're looking for that word. And
I know, and this is a good example where issues can kind of come up. In Burbank, where I live, I could not submit my permits until the electric company came out and said, this is your easement. We have a prescriptive easement. Love that word. Didn't know what it was until I talked to those guys. Prescriptive easement that went on the entire length of my back of the property, because that's where the power line went. So it was not the 4-foot setback. It was a 5-foot setback. And what you're talking about in your situation is they had a 6-foot.
And it depends if you build a 2-story, right? It's different than a single story. And so there are all these minute little differences, and who has, could you build a garage to that? Yes, but since it's living space, you can't. You have, I mean, it got all settled, but the client was practically ready to sell the property because he was so fed up with the city and this whole thing. And I kind of talked him out of it. And the city actually was, at the end, was very helpful to get this kind of a little bit redesigned and shifted over 1 foot.
And everybody was happy.
The building is, I'm very impressed. He had all his subs lined up, and the building just took 5 months. And it's,
5 months. Wow.
That was a stick build, but it was cookie cutter,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody knew what they were doing. But
2 years in the permit process.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Have you seen anything yet? And this is a kind of random question. With the state of California saying that ADUs need to be approved or responded to in 60 days, 2 months. Are you seeing that any of the jurisdictions that you're working with are taking longer than that or procrastinating a little bit too much?
Okay, I was the biggest opponent of the whole system, how the cities work, how the county works. There's not enough staff. It's unorganized. During COVID, I mean, why it took so long is the plans had to air out 3 days before they went back to the next station, right? So it took, but now since I am running our own permits, I only now dealt with 4 jurisdictions in that short period. But I have to tell you, I was pretty impressed, and it takes a lot to be that I am impressed by the county. I actually asked them, they were all new people, and I said, did you guys hire a lot of new people? Yes, they did. And yes, you need to worry about it, because the cashier even didn't know how to take a check from me for a manufactured home, because they take a fee for a HUD and sending it to a HUD, right? So she had no clue how that was done. Okay. But City of Carlsbad was super helpful, never a line there. The City of San Diego is all online. It's a little cumbersome. That system could be improved, right? But I think they did hire more people, and it's getting better.
Okay, good.
Now, to that 60 days, what that new law is, do you want to talk about the new bill that actually said in 60 days that they have to respond, and not just to respond yes or no? If they say no, they have to give you a list of corrections.
Of how to make those corrections. It's not no, go figure it out on your own. It is no, and here's how to correct them.
Yeah. Can I boast a little bit that I got corrections back within 10 days?
That's unheard of.
Yeah, I know. That's why I don't even want to jinx myself, honestly.
What
Yeah,
jurisdiction was that in?
that was the county,
So San Diego County.
San Diego County.
So,
Yeah.
and I want to just, since we're talking about that, where is your headquarters and what is your territory?
So headquarters, we are all in North County, so to speak, in Vista,
So
California.
northern San Diego County.
San Diego County, yes. And so we like to obviously stick to our to our backyard all over San Diego County. But if the factory obviously is located in Riverside, so we wouldn't probably mind going to Orange County and Riverside. But John keeps us pretty busy with just here in San Diego.
And San Diego is a huge county. I lived there for years and I loved it. You can get way out past Alpine and you can get out on your going to El Centro. Do you guys go that far?
Not El Centro. I stop at Alpine. Hey, depends. If somebody calls me and says he needs 4 ADUs, I might go to El Centro.
Because that is a long drive.
Yeah, no, it is. But, we go out and we do a site evaluation and, I know exactly what to measure and, we get all the data and then you don't really need to go out that much until, you get the permit approved.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's not that bad.
Excellent. Okay. One of the things that you and I were kind of talking about, and you do a lot of presentations and you have conversations about appraisals. And I think that that's one of the issues as I've brought up. And I know that's very important to kind of keep in mind when you're talking about a manufactured or factory built modular prefab. It's just the valuation. Because if somebody needs to get a construction loan, not very many people are doing construction loans for ADUs. They're doing HELOCs or they're doing cash. They're not going to go through the construction loan process. So let's leave that off the table, but let's just talk about future valuation. And let's say I had a house built to stick-built construction standards, has been around forever, and then I put a manufactured home in the back of the property. And I say maybe in a year or two, I want to do a refinance. I want to refinance the whole thing. Am I going to be looking at the same dollar value per square foot for a manufactured home ADU as I would with a stick-built ADU?
Okay, this was a loaded question. The short answer is no. But not for the reasons you think. Because as we know in the appraisal world, you have different ways on how to come up with the value of a property. Everybody knows, what did my neighbor's house sold for? I have the exact same match, bedrooms and bathrooms, but my lot is 50 feet larger. So therefore my value should be higher, right? And those 50 feet might be critical because you have a dog and you need a dog run. So this is your personal, personal opinion. The appraisers go by comps and they like to have like-kind comparable sales. Now, if you do an ADU, you're putting an ADU in because you don't want to sell it, right? So there are very few comps out there. Now it is getting better. And because now the listing services, and be it from Zillow to all the MLSs, the multiple listing services with the various realtor offices. And I was on a call a few weeks ago or something, and even in Phoenix, I believe, and even somewhere in Florida also, they now do list the house and does it have an ADU or not. And so it is easier now for the appraisers to actually find comps, where in the good old days until maybe 6 months ago, they were reliant on whether the realtor or the owner actually would know, right? So I advise everybody who is listening, get on a search or make sure that you look at every house that sells in your neighborhood. Does it have an ADU or not? And keep that on your computer somewhere. Okay.
You brought up a very interesting point, and I want to kind of go back to it really quickly before we go too far past it, which is that finding comparable sales for primary residents with ADUs you don't see them that often because people are not building them to sell. And I think that is a really wonderful point. And I haven't heard anybody be that succinct about it. And I talk to a lot of people. So the idea is you want to find a comparable sale. Well, it had to have sold. They're out there, but they're not very common because, as an example, I built my ADU for my father-in-law. And so we're going to be here in this house and he's going to be there in that house for as long as we can. We don't see a point where we're not going to be here. And if it's going to be for rental, whether you are an owner living on the property in the primary house or the ADU, you want rental income, you're not doing it just to flip. Some people are, but most people are not. So it's hard and it's difficult to kind of find that comparative sale, which I think is very, very telling. So thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to kind of commend you on making that observation.
So, and you brought up a good point about the intrinsic value rather than a materialistic value, right? Because let me explain this. This is always, it's easier to explain with a pool. I'm putting in a pool, and as we know, a pool construction with a few cute little rocks and a little waterfall can spend 150 to 200,000, right?
Wow.
Now, if you, yeah, that's what it costs. So I'd rather have an ADU, I know. So if you sell that house tomorrow, a appraiser, let's take a median average house, not La Jolla, not Rancho Santa Fe, not Malibu, and a regular house. If the appraiser wouldn't find sales, the same square footage houses with pools, he would then adjust for the pool. And a pool adjustment is about $20,000.
An adjustment, is that a consideration or an addition to the value?
Yes,
Wow.
That is exactly that. So you might say, okay, it's a new pool. Okay, he gives you 30. So this is why we see ADUs valued anywhere. I have proof of it, don't laugh, from 10,000 to 200 or 300,000. And I mentioned that 10,000 because yes, it did happen.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the issues that I'm having, and I advocate for on a statewide basis, and with the Casita Coalition, is that with ADUs, 9 times out of 10, I'd say maybe even 100, 10 out of 10, whether it's a factory build or it's site built, it's going to be better quality in construction than the primary unit, the primary home. It's going to be to a higher standard. One, it's definitely a higher energy efficiency standard, even if it's, the primary house is 5 years old. But if you look as an example to my primary house here in Burbank that was built in 1934, some of the walls of the exterior side of our house don't even have insulation in them, Lenska. And you're telling me that this stick-built ADU that I'm looking at is not valued the same? That kind of blows my mind that the regulations haven't changed to the extent to be able to say if your ADU is built to a habitable standard, it should be equal to the valuation per square foot of the primary. I don't understand why that is.
Yeah, but the reason why manufactured houses are valued less is because they cost less to build. So again, and it just follows the same principle. Now, do manufactured houses appreciate the same way Stick built? Yes, they do. And actually, if I have a little YouTube channel where I do market updates, and that was actually one of the best appreciating asset class, manufactured homes, in the last 5 years. Here in San Diego, it actually appreciated more than regular houses, because guess what? Anything that was affordable went up 40%, where others went up 30%.
And that's a really good point. Can you share with us just a little bit more about that point? I mean, the cost value or the cost issue, because I think that it's important. And I did that with another manufactured home dealer or company, and they were talking about the percentages of what the savings are, because you said they cost less. So in your perspective, are you seeing a 15% difference? Are you seeing a different percentage? Is it higher or lower versus a stick build?
Okay, as we all know, if you have expensive taste, you can have a more expensive manufactured house, right? So, but generally speaking, yes, it is less expensive. And I would say, because we're going from 400 square feet to 1,200 square feet. Obviously, if you build a 400 square foot stick built, you're probably building it at $600 to $800 a square foot. It sounds outrageous, but wait, actually San Diego sells for about $600 a square foot, a median price. So now if you build 1,200 square feet, you're suddenly building for 400 square foot. So it's hard to really go by square foot. But I would say, especially on the smaller scale, where it is tough to bring in construction equipment and, contractors and, plumbers rather work on 4,000 square foot homes, right? And not on an ADU. So their prices will be higher. So I would say 20% for sure.
That's a really big number, Lenska. So, and from your opinion, as a professional working in this space full time, that a site built, stick built ADU, same square footage with a manufactured home, again, if it can go on the property, you're going to save approximately 20%.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a big number.
Even during COVID, we installed a cute 500. Actually, that one you saw, that craned one in. And I should show you guys the Matterport, the walkthrough. It's beautiful, stainless steel appliances, espresso wood cabinets. I know everybody likes white, but not everybody. and we had that installed, all in permits, fees, whatever it was. It ended up being $180,000. So the client had actually a price from a stick built guy for 260.
And what was the square footage again?
500. So I make it easy.
Yeah. No, and that wouldn't have been a surprising number for a stick built. And so the all-in cost, and I get that question almost every day. And this morning I had a gentleman call me asking for a price, and he goes, and I will all in. How do you answer an all-in question? You can't answer that. You don't know the property. You don't know the requirements. You don't know their taste. And it's not I can't blame a homeowner for asking that question. They just don't know where to start. They don't know where to start. And so I try to be a little bit gentle with them to say, okay, there's a lot of things you need to keep in mind. Have you thought of them yet? And the answer is inevitably, no, I have not. But I still want to try to get an idea. I'm like, well, I almost want to say, hold on, I'm going to tell you, because it's going to be a lot. And then again, they're saying, well, okay, I'll quote them, something that we do. Or I'll be reviewing a bid that they have. And I say, okay, this is really great. I'm reviewing your bid for a stick built, that's something we're not involved in. But then I'll talk about a manufactured home. They're like, why are you doing that? I think it's not built as good. And the quality is different. I'm saying, no, the quality is the same. And I'll show you that. But you do not have as many requirements with a manufactured home as you do with a site built or a stick built ADU. One of those is the requirement for solar panels.
It's on the tip of my tongue for, since you said it's better standard, so why is it that manufactured ADUs do not require solar panels? Because it's built to better energy efficiency code.
Yeah, I think that that is a really good point, and the fact that, you know, the HUD standards are federal standards, and the federal standards supersede state standards and requirements, and they don't require them. And you're right, the energy efficiency of manufactured homes is phenomenal. The other part that I heard somebody kind of bring up is the glazing or windows, the number. So with a stick-built or a site-built construction ADU, you have Title 24, which is the energy calculations that has to be run. It is required by every jurisdiction in the state of California, which means that if you put in a bunch of windows, or if you put in a big sliding glass door, your energy requirements and efficiencies for different appliances or the thickness of the insulation in the walls and the ceiling changes. Every window changes the calculation. With a manufactured factory-built modular that's built to the HUD code, you can put in a ton of windows, and because there's no Title 24 calculation that is done. And I apologize for those of you who are listening, watching, or here right now, as I walked into the weeds. I dove down the rabbit hole where we're talking about the benefits of a HUD home, because you don't have all the multitude of compliance issues that Title 24, the state of California, mandates you have. So that, I think, is another sort of benefit and a perk. And I'm being repetitive. As long as your property can have it delivered or craned in, that's why you need to think of a manufactured or factory built or modular prefab, whatever you call it. It's built to the HUD code. You need to think about it because it could save you up to 20% in your cost. So if you're looking for rental, is a manufactured home, Lenska, in your opinion, it doesn't matter if it's stick built or manufactured, the amount of rent you can get?
It makes, for the amount of rent you're getting, it makes no difference, right? I actually truly believe, because sometimes the option comes up, do I convert my garage or do I put a manufactured house, which is practically the same price? What is better? Now, who wants to live in a attached unit, right? We learned it all during COVID. Everybody wants to have their little patio, a little storage space, and their own space. So definitely for that one, for value, is better to have a detached ADU than an attached ADU.
No question, absolutely. Because if you're trying to get rental income, you do have the ability to have a manufactured home installed on your property, having it detached will add hundreds of additional dollars that you get each month. So much more, because you don't have a shared wall. Now, they're not having to listen to anybody that's in the primary house talk or run around or do anything. I think that, and what we're talking about is a junior ADU, which is the garage conversion. Number one thing that people are doing are garage conversions for ADUs just because of the price. And it's just like, oh, I can do it for, 100, 150, whatever. But having it detached on your property is by far a higher value. And when you talk about the rental income, I agree.
And you know what you have to deduct? I mean, you're paying, let's assume you're paying less for the manufactured home, you're paying less property tax, right? And the construction costs are less, so your net profit is actually higher with a manufactured home by several $100, and you get your return off your investment. So you get, let's say you spend $200,000, you get that back much faster than if you have a stick built or even garage conversion.
Right, because if you're doing it, and I think that the part that I want to kind of focus on with what you're just illustrating is, let's say you had a 600 square foot ADU, and you were looking at doing it stick built or manufactured, and you were okay with either one. You're going to pay 20% less for a manufactured home, and we haven't talked about it yet, but correct me if you have it, or just comment if you have a different opinion. So not only is it 20% less, it is going to be done in half the time. So not only are you going to save money, but your rate of return, your ROI, return on investment, is going to be greater.
I mean, I'm totally with you on that point. And people just need to look at a manufactured home. So I think it's unfortunately, you know, the factory used to have tours, and since COVID, they realized they don't need to do those because it actually interrupts their Saturday flow, I assume. But if you haven't seen one lately, you know, contact me, or, you know, we are actually, the factories are opening up to dealers right now to do tours. So I'm hoping they will maybe open up for regular people.
So and thank you for that, because it brings me to one of the things I wanted to kind of mention and offer, because a lot of people also were inquiring, it's like, hey, you know, like, you all have a background of a beautiful looking ADU and that is something that your company offers to tour. So if somebody's looking into a manufactured home, they can actually see the unit. That's the picture that's behind you. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
And where's that at?
That's in Encinitas, a block from the beach. So bring your bathing suit.
So let's say, hey, you know, that's great, but, you know, I got some property and I'm looking for something a little bit different. Where can I go see something? And so you are a representative of Silvercrest, correct?
Correct.
So Silvercrest just recently, I mean, within like the last month or so, opened up their model home village. And people, I got to tell you, if you want to go see a manufactured home, you go to Corona, California, make an appointment with Lenska or somebody, then get out there and you'll be able to walk through 4 examples of manufactured homes and ADUs. They also have a couple tiny homes that are quote unquote, that are really called park models. So you can see something that's smaller. Now there's some things you got to keep in mind about tiny homes. They're not built for continuous habitation, so you can't rent them out all the time. So they're just kind of meant for recreation.
Okay, I need to stop you there.
Yes.
The city of San Diego and city of Los Angeles do allow tiny houses as rental units or habitable.
Wonderful. I think it's a point that I think is good for people to look at, depending on their jurisdiction, where they may have additional restrictions. I know that in the model that I saw in Corona, they actually had a big disclaimer that said not for continuous habitation. So in some areas like Lenskin's mentioning, that may not apply. So with it, you need to just kind of keep that in mind. It's important. And I would imagine that in a property evaluation, property report, Lenska's going to include that. The really exciting part about what Silvercrest is doing, it is allowing you to go with a representative like Lenska to go tour these units and see and put your hands on them, so you can get an idea of what it's going to feel like in person, and not in theory, and not in a 3-dimensional rendering. I think that means a lot too.
Yeah, no, I always say when people say, oh, I want to see it. Now, if you have an architect work on your house, on your stick-built ADU, you can't see it either. So, and if you kind of see behind me, so that is actually the reason why I am such a proponent for manufactured houses. Is you have a base, what we call a base model, but you can select your kitchen cabinets, you can select flooring. It comes with beautiful baseboards and crown molding. You can change out the tub, you can open up a wall, you can actually add square footage or linear footage to. So there's a lot of stuff you actually can customize it. And that convinced me. Once I knew, I said, this is what people want, and they still want to make it their house, and they can do it with manufactured. So save money and do whatever you want to do on top of it. Hey, give me the cherry. The cherry is on the whipped cream is actually, right, the timing. And
yes.
and not the noise for, and you know how contractors are. I mean, excuse me if anybody is on the phone call, but hey, you have the plumber, sorry, then 3 weeks, nothing, the electrician comes out, right? So you have a constant disruption of your lifestyle. So I'd rather have it dropped in.
And yes, and that's a very good point. It's the disruption. And I've done a couple of blog posts and video updates where, and I did a lot of sort of documenting the process of the build for our ADU in our backyard. And you were 100% correct that the disruption, we knew there was going to be some disruption. And I don't want to share this because this is an important thing. You can, in your mind, kind of say, okay, there's going to be some disruption on your property in your backyard for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. Well, for us, it was close to a year. But the dirt, the dust, the debris, the waste, the trash, all the things that kind of come along with all the different trades coming in is pretty intense. Sometimes the noise is just almost unbearable. Luckily, that's not all the time, but it is a lot of disruption. And I did see that. I was just so happy when I didn't have to see the puff of dust every time they were walking back and forth, because in Burbank, the soils get very kind of light, and everything was dirty constantly. And with a manufactured house option, you're doing the excavation and the build out of the foundation system. And then once that's done, you have your digging and trenching for utility connections or your rough plumbing. And then you're able to just plop that unit down. And if it's a configuration like the one that's behind you, there's no combining of any sections. That one's a single piece. So if you can imagine, if you can, because you can see it, that unit is dropped in, done. It is finished. And all they have to do is hook up the utilities and do some, changes, modifications to get it kind of secured to that foundation system. So you can record the 433A for the permanent foundation system, and it now becomes one with your property. It becomes part of your APN. It is an improvement to it.
And that makes it real estate. So that goes to the county recorder's office. And I always want to make sure to educate people as well, because there are manufactured home, they're usually installing homes in those mobile home parks. And that's a whole different ball game. The utilities are there. It's a whole different jurisdiction. So you want to make sure when you do the ADUs to deal actually with what we are, more an ADU developer rather than a mobile home delivery person, right? So, because some showrooms have that, but they don't have the ADU development experience, what it actually means to get permits and utilities and everything done.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I think that that's also really not covered that well, because we're talking about a specialty within a manufactured home dealer. You can talk to a factory like Silvercrest that I've mentioned, and they'll give you a list of people to say, hi, here, go talk to these folks. But there's nothing on there that says they have a specialty in property development. And when I say property development, I'm not talking about speculative development. I'm talking about developing it for the placement of an ADU, attaching it with a permanent foundation and all the utilities and all the new meters and everything that goes along with it. And that Lenska has been spending a lot of time talking about. One of her responsibilities is actually pulling the permits from I think you said 17 jurisdictions within the county of San Diego.
I know 3 jurisdictions I will never touch.
So I don't know what they are, but if you called her and said, we don't work there, it's probably you live in one of those jurisdictions.
Now, we have the lovely Coastal Commission.
Oh, please don't say that. That's an evil word.
Yeah, I know. That's all I'm saying.
Gosh. So if you live really close to the coast and your property is going to be impacted by the regulations of the Coastal Commission, you might sign on for a long time, and you're going to need to pay a consulting fee because you're going to be working with them for years.
Yes.
That is kind of crazy. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I want to give you the last portion of this webinar to really just kind of share with us what you think a homeowner should know, should be aware of, and what they should consider. Just because let's just say that they have no idea, but they want an ADU. What would you suggest?
I wish they all could be talking to me because they would get the straight story. But and a lot of, actually, I have had homeowners that go out and call the cities themselves. Now, I'm sorry, homeowners, but the city only will volunteer to the answers to the questions you have. And most homeowners don't know what questions to ask. Okay. So I have, people, and I admire people to just make the trip down to the city or call them or make virtual appointments and all these things. But I think, first of all, they really need to get the funding, because in stick build, you have a contingency fund, right? About 10% or so. I suggested to manufacture to clients as well, because there's still a walkway that needs to be done, a fence to be done, and suddenly, you need to have a new mailbox because you're getting a new address, right? So there are these costs that people don't think of it right away, and so that's one. And really watch out for privacy, right? So that you have the windows and doors facing a certain way, right? So right now, maybe your favorite mother-in-law is living in it. And yes, you want to see her face to face every morning cooking the oatmeal. But if suddenly you have a strange tenant there, you don't want that. So that's one. And with the financing, I do get it. It's not, I wouldn't say hard, but there's nothing better to invest in your own backyard.
I agree.
We've
Thank you
all
for that.
heard the stories about inflation, right? And what is real estate? Real estate is an inflation hedge. If you have some money around, go and spend it on an ADU, because property values go up, rents go up. So this is one of the best things you can do to your own property, because right now you can't go out and buy anything because the little house, a dog shag, runs around 800,000.
It does. And I think that you again hit on a really great point, which if you're going to be able to invest in anything that you're going to get your greatest return, and it's going to be probably one of the safest investments, it's in developing your property with an ADU. Doesn't matter what, even if it's just for your private office, even if it's just for something you're not going to get any return on, but it's going to be for your kids or another family member, particularly if you're going to be using it as a rental. And also to the savings, if it's going to be for a family member that's aging. Keep in mind that if you have a family member who's aging and may need to, just having them there is a huge comfort. You feel, because they're safe, your loved one has in a much safer place. But as they may need some additional care, having somebody come in from time to time is not going to be as expensive as if they had to live in an assisted living center. They could have some independence, but they have somebody doing some things and some responsibilities. Where they can do that on your property, again, your assisted living facilities here around where I live are about $8,000 to $12,000 a month. Just think of that, $8,000 to $12,000 a month. That's money from their estate that's being paid out. That's money that you and your family are having to pay out. And if you can invest that money into the ADU and have your parent or family member there and pay for a nurse or somebody to come in, it's not that expensive. It's significantly less. And then you will always have that investment on your property for as long as you own it.
That was well said. And I think, and that's why I believe we won't see a glut of inventory or anything on the market, because obviously people have 3%, 4% mortgage rates. And please don't overthink it. Some people, I have clients that call me and say, I can't believe it, the interest rate for my HELOC would be 9%. Okay. So 9%, let it be 12%. but you're sitting on a 2.5%, 3% main mortgage, and you're just paying the 10%, let's call it, on a very small amount. If you would blend that rate and weigh that rate, right? You pay on 600,000, you pay 3%, and on 100 or 200,000, you pay 9%. You're still below 4 if you're weighing it. So some people, you have to really look at numbers, and that's one thing where you have to probably all really sit down with. Maybe you have a financial advisor. Watch out for real estate brokers. They just want to list your house. Actually, this is why I started dealing with ADUs, because I talk people out of listing, out of my $20,000, $30,000 commission. And I told him, no, why don't you do this? Why don't you add an ADU?
And I think that is a really great point to kind of wrap up, because what Lenska has just kind of touched on is that there are so many people out there within the ADU space or the housing space or the mortgage space, and spending some time with someone who has a very broad perspective that sees things with a much more sort of educated, experienced sort of viewpoint is really critical. And then being able to say to somebody, hey, hold on, you don't need to do this. This is probably the better answer. Now you're more of a consultant. You're more of a coach saying, hey, hold on, I'm not going to tell you, yeah, just list it. You have another option, and I think you really should consider it. And I think that that's really, really valuable. We will be able to have this for those of you who have been with us live. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. We will have this up on the ADU University's website. It's going to be part of our lectures and seminars series, and you are available to subscribe and have access to the now 25 of the webinars. You can also sign up on our mailing list if you just wanted to get notifications of when we have these live events, which are always free. And I do know that we will have John on for a round 2, because I know he's sorry that he missed this. And we will look forward to having a follow-up conversation with Crest Backyard Homes. Lenska, thank you for all of the time today. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, let's plan on next year and do an update and see what has changed in the business.
Oh, absolutely. I think we can do that. Lenska, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.